part of the Farmhouse haul, I said that I would show you how you can take something that is a really beautiful item and go ahead and reuse it. This is a teacup that didn't have a saucer, but I still think it's really beautiful. So I'm showing you how you can put that into your decor and still have some decor quality to it. So what I have is just some floral foam, and you can get this that it has an adhesive in the back. You can see this one has old glue stick on it. But you could go ahead and peel that and that could be stuck inside there. You can also very easily take a serrated knife and you just go ahead and saw and make it to be the shape that you want it to be, and you can fit it into your container. So I went ahead and I already trimmed this one up, and I've added some succulents, and these succulents are actually fake succulents. I bought an assortment online, and I picked the ones that I think would look good with the item that I am working with. So there are pink ones, there are green ones, and these look pretty realistic. I am not very good. I'm good at plants and I'm good at flowers, but for some reason I cannot keep a succulent alive for anything. And then I went ahead and I cover the floral foam with this moss. And moss is something that you can purchase at any hobby store pretty easily as well. And you just go ahead, and I didn't glue this or anything. I just literally just stuck it on there, pushed in the succulent. This is missing a little bit part, there we go. And then I just popped it into this little teacup, and now it is a perfect arrangement for you to put out on a table. And it was super simple. And again, this was a really inexpensive mug that I got at a dollar store, or sorry, at a thrift store. Bought this at a thrift store. And you can go ahead and use this now for a decor item. The way that you could display this is on a wooden tray. Again, this was an item that I purchased at Goodwill, and it had this beautiful carving in it. And so to accent it, I added a little bit of acrylic paint, put in white and put in some blue, and then I let it dry for a second, and then I wiped it down. You could probably use whatever color you want. You could paint the whole thing. I like having a little bit of a wood tone to it. And then I could go ahead and place that on there, and that would look really pretty for a decor item. Now, keeping up with that idea of reusing and repurposing, this is something that I found. It is your Nippon, and it's like a relish tray or something, and it's really pretty, but I don't have any other pieces to go with it. And I happened to come across this little container. This is a little creamer. Again, this one's made in Japan. It's really pretty, has a little tiny defect there. It's a little bit faded here, so it's not a high dollar item, but I still think it's really beautiful. And so this is another piece that I would go ahead and put the floral foam in and add your succulent. Pick one that you feel looks good. And then I would put this out, out for display as well, and that would be a really nice decor item. So you could put these things together as a small collection, or you could go ahead and put them in individual trays. It really, depends on what kind of look you want for your decor. So we're gonna take that little pig, this little one, and we're gonna actually make it look a little bit like this one. This one was another thrift store pig, and I went ahead and put silver on it, spray paint. Then I went ahead and put some blue to make it look like I had a patina, and then I washed it with white. This base was black. Again, this was just a base that I found at Goodwill, and I went ahead and purchased that, and I glued him down. So now this gives him a little bit more presence. Now this little guy I think is cute. I may not paint him too much. I might whitewash him just a little bit. And this is one of the bases that I also found very similar to that one. So we're gonna go ahead and we're just gonna use some craft paint, and we're just gonna paint over that. So it's nothing really expensive, it's not a big deal. You could use DIY paint or any Sloan paint or anything like that, but I also believe, just using simple craft paint works just well, just as fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint this up. Super simple. And you usually have some type of craft paint laying around rather than having to go out and purchase a special paint to do this, you could just use simple craft paint. It's like, you know, some of that paint is only like $1 or 99 cents or 89 cents. I actually bought an entire plastic bin full of craft paint at a garage sale. There was probably about, I don't know, 20 bottles in there. And I asked her how much for all the paint, and she said $1. So I was like, okay, because I can always find a purpose and a need and use it up. So there we go. So we're just gonna let that dry, and then we will find some glue that we can use to adhere this little pig on there, and we'll see what we can do about that little spot that seems to be out of order with his look. Okay. So while our base is drying, I'm gonna go ahead and use some of this really inexpensive, just white acrylic paint. And I'm gonna go ahead and paint this little guy over just a little bit so that he has sort of a whitewashed look. So I'm gonna just go ahead, and I'm using just a stiff, rigid brush, and I'm working really quickly because I don't want this to stay on forever. I actually want to wipe most of it off. We are doing this just to kind of tone that back, give it a little bit of a whitewashed look. Again, I'm working really quickly because it dries fast. You can always add more, you can always add a different color if you wanted to, but I really wanted to go with a whitewash. I do want you to be able to still tell that it was a little black and white pig, but I want to wipe most of it off. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And so now he's got a little bit of a whitewash on him. If I wanted to, I could go ahead and add a little bit more of a patina to him. Kind of depends on what you're looking for. I could also go a little more solid. I think his eyes are a little creepy myself, so I'm gonna try to rub that in there. Ugh, just won't stay. We're gonna have to let it dry in between there just a little bit more, because I think that actually brought out the creepy eye even more. So we're gonna get rid of that. So we're gonna keep rubbing this on, letting it set. Let it dry for a second. Okay, so I've let that dry a little bit more, and I rubbed it off so that I have all of it pretty much looking a little bit more aged, which I want. I want it to not look so perfect and shiny. I just want it to look a little bit older. All right. For Farmhouse decor, you could go ahead and you could, do the whole thing a little bit heavier, kind of like this little piggy here. This one was done to look a little bit more aged. This has more of that patina look, blue, green, that sort of thing. And it goes with certain Farmhouse decor. This is almost dry. We're gonna let that dry a little bit, but here you get the idea of what you would do. You would set that on there and you would glue it together. So we're just gonna give it some time to dry. The glue that I'm going to be using is Aleene's Tacky glue. I think it works really well for crafts. It also works really well for putting mixed materials together. It's an all-purpose adhesive. It does dry clear, so I think it's a really great tool to use for gluing things together. Remember that wreath that I picked up at a garage sale that was pretty beat up? And it looks okay, but it's not great all by itself. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and take another wreath that I picked up at a garage sale. It was a wreath that someone used for the holiday, and it just got kind of beat up and old, and we're gonna fix this up. So I do a lot of looking for craft materials at garage sales. You can actually buy them really super cheap at a lot of different places. And I just accumulate enough of them so that I know what I need and organize it so that I have it ready to go. So I'd like to be able to put this on here, but I think that this is a little bit too small for the interior of this big one. And so I actually have this old wreath, and it actually has its own ribbon. And I think that looks very nice layered on top of there. And that would look great. And then I can take my old one and I can put this now inside of there, and I'd wire it where this piece is kind of missing a lot of detail, and just wire it in and then put the ribbon over the top, and then you have a much more full, more beautiful looking wreath. So I'm going to show you how to do that, but we're going to do that in fast forward. And there you go, a beautiful wreath thrifted for less. The grapevine wreath bought at a garage sale. The other wreath was left over from other projects. And then the apple one was also bought at a garage sale. Layer them together, floral wire, and you have yourself a brand new wreath. Little bit of the tacky glue. Take your pig that was whitewashed, go ahead and center him on your little painted circle, and there you go. You have something that was simple, and that glue will dry clear, and you've got that cute little pig now. And now go into your decor, and he takes up a little bit more of a presence, which I think is appropriate for the Farmhouse Thrift haul. Okay, I spoke of that chicken earlier that had some cracks and like a really slight little fracture, just some imperfections. And I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing I did with the pig, except I'm gonna go ahead and cover the entire chicken. So I just have my DIY, I don't know if you're familiar with that, it's Debbie's Design Diary, and this is White Swan. And I'm gonna go ahead and put a coating of this all over this chicken. It'll probably take about 2 coats, and I'm gonna try to cover up the majority of this chicken up with the White Swan. This paint is different than other paints because it actually has a clay base to it, and so that is something that makes it, you know, able to stick to glossy glass materials like this. So you couldn't just do this with any type of paint. The pig that I used, and I just used the craft paint, that was actually okay to just use regular cheap craft paint, because it was, it had a rough texture. It was a bisque layer. It wasn't a layer that required, you know, it wasn't shiny, so I'll be okay doing it with that one. If I see some problems with it, I obviously can hit it with some of this DIY paint. But I'm gonna go ahead and coat this chicken up for you, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Okay, so while our chicken dries off to the side, I'm gonna go ahead and tackle that box. This is that red box that I think is just a little bit too loud for the Farmhouse style. I'm gonna go ahead and use the same paint. This is DIY White Swan. And I wiped it down just to make sure that it was clean. And I'm gonna go ahead and do the coating on the front of this box. And all I'm gonna do is just brush it on. Again, if you have not watched Jami Ray Vintage, her show, her internet show, you might want to look at that, because she spends time with her and her husband, and they buy thrifted things, and they go ahead and they paint them with all kinds of DIY paint, and then they distress them, and they actually have made an entire business out of it where they actually sell their items. So you can find things that people have cast off and decided that it's no longer useful for them, and you can actually repurpose them and repaint them, fix them, whatever it takes, and you can reuse it in your home, and you can still have a well-decorated, beautiful home for pennies compared to what other people are spending large amounts of dollars on. And not only that, is that you are helping to help, you know, reduce the footprint, the human footprint, because these are items that have already been created, they've already been manufactured, and you are now taking them and repurposing them. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna continue painting this, and I will show you what it looks like when I'm done. You can see how this rooster is now coated in white and it is just drying. I think the results are nice. I think that they're going to look great. I may consider doing this one as well and painting this one out, but that's what it looked like before. And this is what it looks like afterwards. And I'm just gonna keep that white. I'll probably put a wax coating over it when I'm done, just to make sure that it stays on there. And then we'll maybe finish that other one too. Now this is that box that was bright red. I went ahead and used white swan all over it. I did have to do 2 layers. And so now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna see what happens when I wet distress it. So all I'm gonna do is just take a spray bottle and some paper towel, and I'm just putting a little bit of water on it. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna wet distress just the top here. And I'm fine if a little rust shows through with that design. I think that would look nice. All right, I moved you in a little bit closer so you can see what I'm doing. And what I'm doing is I am wet distressing this a little bit, using a heavier rag to kind of scrub that up. Okay. And what the water does is it reactivates the paint, and so then what happens with that is that then you get the lift in the paint, which you can decide how much or how little you want that to come off. And right now I'm just focusing mainly on the actual metal piece that was on here. And then I can start moving on to the box. Remember, the box was a really bright red, so I would have to decide how much of that do I really want to remove from there. I think a little bit of red peeking through for farmhouse style would actually be okay, because I do think that, you know, reminds you of barns, things like that. I'm just dabbing a little bit here because that texture is pulling the paper towel up really hard. I don't like how that is looking. All that paper pulp's going everywhere. But we can get rid of that pretty easily. So there's that. All right. And then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna wet distress some of the edges of this box to see if I can lift a little bit of red. So I'm gonna let that set up for a minute. Okay, I substituted that paper towel for a rag because I think that'll work well. And so I just got a white cloth rag, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna lift some of that red. Let's see how that looks when I do that. And again, if you were to do this with any Sloan paint or some other type of paint, you would probably have to sand it. But this is that clay-based DIY paint, so that allows you to just get it wet and then wipe it. So I'm deliberately lifting some of the red out, so it looks a little bit older, a little bit distressed. I actually like how that's turning out. If you don't like it, if you feel like it distressed too much, there's a simple fix. You just go ahead and add a little paint back on it. It's really easy to do. You do need to buy your DIY paint from retailers that have them in their stock, like at flea markets, antique stores. There's usually a vendor in most places where you can find it. So you can't just go to the store and purchase it. You actually have to go to a vendor who has it. So there's the top. I might put a little bit more white on there. I feel like that's just a little too much. And then I'm going to continue wearing down the sides a little bit, and I'll show you when I'm done. Alright, so I'm reporting back after about an hour of working on these pieces. I did have to put multiple layers on the chickens, and you can see that they dried up pretty nice. I will need to put a wax layer over the top, but I actually think they look a lot better. So I went ahead and I did all three. So now I have a trio painted in DIY paint in white, white swan. And then of course I'm going to revisit this little guy that was on the base. And this is our little piggy now. And he is still drying on its surface, but there he is. He's all fixed up and ready to be put into a farmhouse style decor. And last but not least, we have our box. Alright, so the story behind the box, I did try to do the white, the wet distress on it, and with the red actually made it pink. It like kind of bled, and I just really didn't like it. It wasn't red, it was kind of this real pinky color, and it's not quite what I was looking for farmhouse. So this is where it's going to stay. I just need to wax it up. I did let some of the color be revealed in the metal parts. I let some of the red come through in a few areas, but on the top I really just left it white, and then I left the inside edge red, so there's like a little surprise. But this is a great box that once I wax it, people can use for their remote controls and put it on the table, and I think that would be a really great side table for somebody. So the next step after doing all these DIY projects is to show you how to put all of this collection together in different vignettes and show you how we can put the cow painting in with the chickens and the jars and the vases and stuff like that. And I'll try to stretch it to be kind of like really colorful to really neutral, to kind of a balance between natural organic items with more script and a little bit more colorful. So I'll give you many different options using similar materials and just switching them out, and hopefully that will help you when you're out thrifting or purchasing items to know how you can mix and match it together too. This is with the dark wax, and this is without the dark wax.